Hey guys, so we're on the second quarter of last year now. I'm gonna take you through from March till about June, and everything up till March was pretty much value only. There's the odd splash of color here and there, but really that's just me playing around. That has nothing to do with actual practice. Actual practice is just concerned with answering the basic questions of what does it take to reproduce something and what are the essential steps that I need to follow in order to have a predictable good result, which I don't manage to get so far. So going into March now, I've already shown you this in the last one. It's just basically spending more time on single pieces now. Instead of just going in and trying to finish as quickly as possible, I'm taking more time now, coming back to a piece as opposed to just trying to finish all in one sitting. That's a big thing, is I always would try to just finish everything in one day. Or just finish it just in that one. I don't know why that is. I think most of the things we see online, they're either edited or they're just recorded in one sitting. So I think we just get this idea of you just finish it when you started. It's hard to explain why we have just preconceived notions like that just stick in our heads, but when you're not doing it in an environment with other people and when you're not being taught, you get stuck in a lot of just weird ideas that you just pick up about how something should be done because you just don't have all the information that you need to make an educated guess about how something realistically could be done. Anyway, when I shut up now, here we go. So value getting a bit easier now, and even giving myself some notes. Still not really working things out properly. Not really measuring when I have to measure. Just really, if I was to give myself advice now, I would just say that this is more of a form study. So even though I'm doing a portrait, sort of, this is just a form study. So really it's just rendering the volume of the head, just a spherical sort of form, and then just another one over here. So really just rendering basic shapes is what the essential thing is from this exercise, but I am thinking of it in terms of a portrait, which is why then I start noticing discrepancies and stuff. But really, everything I'm doing, even if I don't know it, it's all just learning how to model form. I'm quickly gonna skim over these. Another one, basically just, this is one of the first time I ever tried changing something, and that's what I've always wanted to do, is to not just copy something, obviously, but to be able to change it and still have it look believable. So this is, again, this is still only a few months ever since I've started, and I still can't do this properly, but this is something that I've always wanted to do, is to be able to edit stuff and just use something to create something else. And this is the level of my imagination and stuff. I'd been studying a lot of anatomy at that point, a lot of books and courses and stuff, so I would know where everything goes, but I just don't have the technical ability of the actual draftsmanship and drawing to be able to do it. This is my first longish sort of study, so this is mid-March, and I think I did this over in one day again. Probably spend hours and hours on it. Proportions not too far off, but really just now I'm starting to get into edges, sort of. Not really intellectually, not really thinking, oh, I need to spend more time refining my edges or my transitions, but just noticing things more, noticing when things read and when they don't read, when things are too soft, and just trying out, like, why does my brushstroke look like this when it's supposed to look like that? Just really experimenting with the medium is what I would call it, because it's not just about the fundamentals like the edges, perspective, the form, all that stuff. It's just really learning to know your tools as well. So it's such a multifaceted process where you don't just do one thing, but it's just so many things coming together. So this is, if you just look at this is anatomy, this is form, this is craftsmanship, this is the tools, the handling, everything coming together to produce this one thing, plus the planning and the forethought before of where my light's gonna go, where my dark's gonna go, and then you're trying to do all that as one process, meaning every single stroke you make is 4, 5, 6, 10 things collapsed into one. So there's really a lot of thinking, and if you haven't done your practice beforehand, you're not able to think about those complex things and you just get lost in small things. Again, just more form renderings. Still not really understanding. Is that all I need to do? Just copy it? Yeah, that's all you need to do, dummy. This one, more of the same. This one, too complex. Didn't really know where to start from. Didn't know if I start from the background, the foreground. As you can see, it's all over the place. It's foreground when the background's not finished. It's all on one layer, I think, most likely. Again, still that old school sort of mentality of sticking to traditional Puritanist sort of just do it how it's supposed to be done and don't try any of that new stuff you people are doing on computers. And then this is more imagination over the top of it, just trying to render stuff out. As I've shown you in previous pieces, from imagination is really just not, I don't have the experience yet, and I don't use reference because I don't know I should at this point. If I could go back, I'd smack myself. This is the same, just trying to create a space that you're sitting in. So that's one thing that really perplexed me is, how do you define where you are as the camera? So this is almost at the end of March, and this is where I start going into color now. You can see when I scroll down, you can see a lot more color that I'm getting into. So form stuff getting a bit easier, still a lot to learn, but just, from time to time having some success and seeing that I understand some things, and then just moving on. This is my sticking again to old thinking. Instead of using paths and whatever, just trying to render everything out without any help, which is not how it's done anyway by anyone. Spending more time on the same piece from before, a bit more developed now. So this about 10 days apart, just trying to push the form further. I think many people can benefit from just a longer study. I think when you've done enough things so that you can solve basic problems, you should then finalize that with something that poses a lot of that simple problem over and over and over. So something like basic forms over and over. So like spherical form, just rendering basic forms and having them read. This doesn't read too well, but it's a definite improvement over what it was like before. And then a few days later, just trying, using paths, using everything I know, and just trying to push something. And this is really the difference between using the correct tools and not using the correct tools. Like this is rendered using paths and everything that you would normally want to use, and this is done with the, I don't want to call it romantic notion, but just the stupid idea of just do everything by hand, don't use any help, and it doesn't work that way. Use all the help you can. That's how everyone does it. That's basically the end result is all that matters. No one's gonna care if you shouldn't have taken 10 days to finish something that you can do in like 2 hours. What's the point? If you're studying, don't take shortcuts. If you're doing work, then just whatever it takes. So at the end of March, after more value studies, now getting into this isn't landscape. This is color. This is color only. So just trying to, without color picking or anything, just trying to get the same hue as on the reference. So this was a big thing for me, is just now exploring color. So not really thinking of form now, because I'm not rendering form when I'm doing this. I'm only just trying to duplicate colors and shapes. So this is completely 2D drawing. And it's not concerned with anything but just copying shape. Just practice, that's all. Just manual practice. Is if you like play tennis or something, you just serve the ball 1,000 times or do whatever. More form, shape, not just again being perplexed at how simple things seemingly are, and just what it takes to make something. Again, not too bad. Edges and everything else again problematic, but really happy that my color is really the same. I remember doing this study from beginning of April maybe, and I just remember I noticed that my hue was slightly off, but I was really pleased that everything was pretty much first in the right place almost, and really close in hue. Again, this is all just practicing picking colors correctly and putting them in the right place. And color is not just, it's not just the actual color, but the value and everything else to read. So I was really pleased when I would get a good result. So basically, since the beginning of the year until now, we've just been building basic form, whether I've known it or not. We've just been building basic forms, just trying to duplicate black and white shapes, and now we're trying to go into color and imagination try. All the imagination stuff you're gonna get to see until the end of the year is just basically me seeing stuff, but not really having the skill to pull it out, or haven't used reference or anything. So just no, not enough experience. That's basically it. Insufficient funds in drawing is not enough experience. All imagination stuff now. All imagination stuff. Not that it's very imaginative. It's just, I mean, that stuff can't possibly exist. One of the first studies I was happy with, the color studies, because was a lot of different things in the scene now, and I sort of managed to. These are all quick, by the way, in case, meaning not quick as in like 5 minutes, but quick in terms of I'm not trying to go back in and make it perfect. I'm only trying to get the essentials there so that when you see this, you can sort of get the idea of this. Obviously, it's not in any way good or finished or anything, but if you look at this, you know it's a scene with a guy and then some lights around. So really just practicing color. Don't have great expectations about what's going to come out. Just do the menial, boring sort of work of familiarizing yourself with tools, and hue and value and all that color and value, they are just as much tools as your stylus or your pencil or whatever. So I'm familiarizing myself with the tools of value, of form, with the tool of form, just trying to render things out. And I was happy with this one because sort of really almost subsurface scattering thing. I had shadows and light areas in the same part, and really just trying out more dynamic stuff instead of just a one-tone thing. This way too complex. I remember trying out to do this one, and I was just looking at all the different areas and stuff, but still the things we talked about in the first video, the process is missing. And even now, only now do I start to understand that this isn't, you know, when they do matte paintings aren't hand painted by someone, you know, pixel by pixel. These mostly came from different photos and stuff, and then you would have 3D and textures painted on top, so very economical. You would only have to work out the composition and then blend things together, not paint everything from zero, from scratch. So no process. Imagination, more imagination, bad imagination. I think I was trying to do about 30-minute quick speed painting things and just work out something, but to do an environment, you need to have really a lot under your belt in terms of just figuring out scale, knowing how big things are in relation to other things, understanding where you are in the scene, your camera or your eye, however you want to think about it. Also then having the knowledge of architecture if you want to have buildings in there, or botanical knowledge if you want to have. It's a fancy way of just saying, you know, just paint some trees and just spend the time learning all the elements before you can do the big picture. Loads of bad stuff, and imagination stuff. Just, it's not even just imagination, it's just studying the tool of composition now. So how does composition work, darks on lights and whatever, you know, just trying that out, trying out loads of stuff, from line drawing to value, all of them turning out pretty bad. This one I did with Feng Zhu. He had a video where he does this landscape, and I just did it in value, sort of close, and then practicing the same thing from imagination. As you can see, I don't. One thing, by the way, when you're a beginner is, at least I have the tendency to not push things too far. So you can see almost everything that I do from imagination is in the mid-tones. So really muddy, not clearly defined, no bright brights or dark darks, or just range close together, because it seems like a safe thing to do. You know, you're not having too much of a risk by putting out this black patch and you have no idea if it's in the right place or not, and anyone can see it. But the thing is, people can see it anyway. I mean, this is no good no matter how I look at it. So you might as well just get some guts and just put whatever everywhere and just see what happens. Practicing some line now. Line is definitely not one of my strong points. Not that at this point anything is, but just trying that out too. So just mixing things together. The tool of line, tool of value, tool of form, all of that stuff. This was one of my first attempts at a master study, because again, just looking at it, very simple, just prisms, just rectangle. If you can draw a rectangle, you should be able to do this. And then just simple, very simple, almost like a rectangle again, but just with the top chopped off. And you just repeat it that many times. So I tried to construct it and stuff. Obviously realized that it's a lot more work than I can sort of deconstruct in my head of how it's supposed to be. Then I'm also trying to duplicate the perspective which again, my very rigid approach to how it should be done is definitely hampering me, because at this point, like, I can't possibly decipher this. I have no idea where everything's supposed to be going, and I definitely lack. First of all, I'm not using any mechanical tools, which you should for something like this, and I just genuinely lack the experience to be able to do that. I haven't done enough figure drawings, even though if you just spend enough time you can copy anything. But just the way I'm approaching the problem, obviously, is not a good enough way to do it. This is one of my breakthroughs with color. I was really happy with this one because I didn't use any blending or anything, so just picking colors based on what I see and just using like 100% opacity and just trying to get stuff down and really starting to just understand the difference between like a shadow tone and a light tone. So you know how hard it is when you're just starting out to distinguish how it's it's the same surface, but then you just have a shadow going over the top of it, and then one turns darker, the other one remains. It's just small stuff like that you just need to process a few times before it stops being weird and you just are able to see it. This one I was like, this is a Bobby Chu study, and I couldn't understand how could he be rendering stuff that simple. Like, when you look, again, that thing where you look at photos and they're so complex and you have so much detail and everything, and at the same time you can definitely see, like, this is a mountain. Like, that's all it takes to render a mountain. So at this time, I wasn't really approving of that. It's supposed to be hard and really difficult and take me another 20 years to get good at it, most likely, but just trying to duplicate it again. But I suppose one of the first times where I looked at an illustrator's work instead of just photographs and movies and stuff, and tried to just replicate what they're doing. But at this time, I wasn't really thinking of, oh, that's all it takes to render a mountain, I don't need to do any more work. It was more of, oh wow, he's done it so simply, I just want to try that out for a study. And then this is from imagination, so sort of close, but values all muddied up again. Very strong. I still have this repetition of shapes is almost identical. New type of exercise, trying to paint into a picture. As you can see, even when I have stuff around, it's still hard for me to get the right things down. Also, I'm missing the scale and everything. I can't create the scale at this point. I wanted those mountains to be much closer to me and to seem huge, but they seem very distant because just perspective and everything else is just not there. Just not enough practice. Trying it again and again and again. Imagination. Let's just see where we are now. We're on April. More imagination stuff. Keep on trying. This one of the first attempts to render anatomy, and again, so simple. It's all just so very simple, and I knew all the names, I knew all the tendons, I knew all the muscles, where they attach and where they're supposed to go, but I don't have the skill to translate the theory into practice. This whole year has been the struggle of theory versus practice. So I would know where everything's supposed to go, but I just can't make it go there. If I'm supposed to point it out, I can point out which tendon is from which muscle and goes to where, but I can't render it. So this one took me a few hours, and then started into some figure now. So figure relatively more complex definitely than what I've been doing before, just like with spheres or single objects. So trying out to render stuff, trying to render limbs and stuff. I was pretty happy at the time with those just because they look like stuff, even though of course when I look at them now I can see they're very, very bad edges on all of them. Happy with this one with the I hadn't done more glossy reflections by that time, so just trying stuff out, still practicing form. So really going backwards and forwards, going into color, then going back into form, pushing one thing, then pushing the other, trying imagination from time to time, doing some color studies, color thumbs. So really it's all about a balance, always about pushing one thing forward, going back, what else can I do, and then pushing that thing as well. My first figure, I think this one took me about 8 or 9 hours, and I was really disturbed, and I was asking people like, how long is this supposed to take, because I can take another 5 days with this and it's still not gonna be great, and just sort of left it at that after the 9 hours, because I had the idea that it's supposed to be done quicker, but at this time I just wasn't willing. Not that I wasn't willing, meaning I would have done it, I would have spent the time if I knew it was going to give me the result. I just thought I'm not supposed to be taking this long. Imagination, This is just saved for reference. And then a bigger master study now. Bigger master study. Never quite managed to get the portraits done right. Also, again, not using any layers. Apart, the figures are on their own layer, but everything else is just, I'm not using any other mechanical tools or anything else. I'm trying to paint it as close to traditional as you could paint it, and I don't think anyone with my skill level, which is like close to 0, would attempt to do it to handle something this complex traditionally, just because it's just too complex. You'd probably be doing still lifes or something, just a few objects arranged together. But you wouldn't try so many different things, and especially with, I'm just looking at her eye now, it's just huge. I think maybe that's why she's kissing her, to make her feel better, because I think she just got a beating. Anyway, 20 minutes in so far. I think I'll cut this video here now and continue on into the next one. I'll just finish up with this one and just say, at the time I tried it, tried figures, definitely the most complex thing I'd done it until that point. And I was trying all kinds of things I knew from before about using the tools that are available in Photoshop and stuff, but just still not being able to apply everything. So these, they look like I've selected them, but then these I've rendered them just by hand. So all I can say is just still unrefined process and really not having a strategy in mind. But all that, I don't think that's due to not having thought about it, meaning thinking about it wouldn't have solved my problem, but just more practice, more familiarization with the task is really what's needed at that point. Getting more experience, learning to know how one thing leads into the next, because you can't possibly think logically about something that you don't know the ins and outs of. I mean, if you haven't followed something through from beginning to completion at least a few times, it's very hard to be able to predict in your head how it's supposed to go. So for anyone that's stuck at that stage where you're just trying to make something look right still, don't feel bad about it. All you need to do is just get more experience in there. Do think about it, but try to push something as far as you can, and don't judge yourself too harshly about whether you're not spending enough time thinking or whether you're doing it in a stupid way, because I can look at this now and think to myself, this was done stupidly, but at that time I just didn't have a better toolkit. So all I'm saying now is just, this can be done better with more experience. So just keep pushing, guys, and just keep going. And I hope we'll get into some good stuff soon, because this is all just terrible pictures one after the other. So I'll see you in the next vid.